A parade and tribute service honored the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. 10 News reporter Sean Franklin shows us how Dr. King's message continues to resonate in Knoxville.
Marching to remember a message.
People are interested in change.
Hundreds gathered Monday in East Knoxville to remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
You know, when you see hundreds of people come out in 20-degree weather, that takes commitment and dedication.
They're two values Dr. King hoped the country would embrace during the Civil Rights Movement. Jackie Clay DuBose is the vice chair of the MLK Commission here in Knoxville.
To say with your person that I believe in justice, I believe in fairness, so much so that I'm going to join with my neighbors and march down Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard to honor the example that he left for us.
An example displayed proudly with the culmination of the parade and a memorial service at Overcoming Believers Church. It featured guest speaker Rena Evers Everett, the daughter of civil rights activist Medgar Evers and Myrlie Evers Williams. The crowd also celebrated with music.
So we're hoping that people will have their hearts and minds open and feel challenged to go back out into their communities and do whatever it takes to make a just community for all of us to live in.
DuBose says Dr. King would be honored to see how Knoxville honors him and continues to push for change.
I think he'd say that the fight's not over. I mean, you can turn on your TV or look at your social media feed to know that. I think he'd say, keep going. Keep marching, stand together, love is the answer.
In East Knoxville, Sean Franklin, 10 News.
And again, organizers of the tributes today say it's important to carry Dr. King's message into every day of the year.